Hello everyone and welcome to the demonstration video for Word Chapter 4. Alright, so just as routine, again, if you need skeleton notes or what we're going over in this video, you could download it here in the Chapter 4 resources. Also, if you're following along with this demo, make sure you download the brochure 4 document. Let me go ahead and download that and let me open it up real quick. And of course, when you open it up, make sure you hit enable editing. All right, and then going back to the resources page, there are two images I want you to download. To download it, click into the image. It'll take you to, oh, actually that's an automatic download. All right, but just make sure you download it. They will both go into your download folders. There we go, because they're going to be important for today's skills. All right, let's get started. So in Chapter 4, we're going to go over all of the tools for you to make your document look prettier. So a lot of times we think documents is just typing in words, essays, but you could also use documents to create certain things like brochures and flyers that you could hang up, pass out. It doesn't have to just be instructions or just an essay. Now, usually when we create brochures or flyers, we need graphics and images, which Microsoft Word does provide. So we're going to go over those skills in this demonstration, how to include graphics and how to format the graphics. All right, so one of the first things we're going to do, quite honestly, not quite sure why we're using a document here. A lot of this stuff we could just create out of thin air. So I'm just gonna go to the very end of this document and I'm gonna direct you to our Insert tab. We're gonna be using the Insert tab a lot in this demonstration because this allows us to include a lot of different graphics and fun little things to our document. All right. One fun thing we could do is something called SmartArt Graphics. So you will notice, like let's say in this document, bullet points are very nice to get certain points across or certain information. But there's also another fun way to do that. So, well, let's go back to our Insert tab. You'll see in the middle group, there's something called Illustrations. And one of the buttons is SmartArt. Go ahead and click on it. And you'll see a big selection for you to choose from. What SmartArt is basically different graphics for listing information or visualizing information. You could go ahead and explore the different categories. So you'll notice there's the lists, so you could list out certain points in a nice way. There's even hierarchies. So if you want certain, there we go. If you want certain ways to relate information, there's these boxes with different connections. This one, whoa, this one's even a lot more organized. There's certain relationships you could choose. Notice there's even graphics like triangles. Whoa, this one, there we go. This one looks a little more fancier. There's a teeter-totter here. There's a lot of fun stuff you could do with this. Even, I know some students like, there we go, like cycles if you want to show step-by-steps. Pyramids are very nice for showing hierarchy. Again, a lot of other things you could choose from. Even, where's our classic Venn diagrams? There we go, our Venn diagrams. These are provided with SmartArt Graphics. So that gives you an idea of all the possibilities you could use and include in your document. Not just simple bullet points. You could include SmartArt Graphics. All right. For us, we're just going to do a very simple list. Again, in the assignment, I want you to choose a very specific one. I'm just going to just choose from here. So let me do, let's find something with just text. So you could hover over each one. Notice it gives you the name for each. Let me just do this trapezoid list, something fun. Just go ahead and select the SmartArt graphic you want to choose and go ahead and click OK. And it will go ahead and insert it into your document. Now the fun thing here is you could still edit it and change how it looks. So for including text, you just click into it and start typing. So maybe this is part 1, this one is part 2, this one is part 3. And you can keep adding text, maybe step, drop, and roll. So I'm just clicking into each one and typing in. If I don't want these extra bullet points, you could just delete it. There we go. Going in, delete. Perfect. Another way in which you could include text, if you go over, usually it's already automatically provided to you. But if you click on this little arrow on the left of it, there you go. It shows you an actual bullet point version of everything in each component. If you want to include, so maybe in this case, maybe we want another trapezoid for part 4. You could just go ahead into this section and let's do enter to create a new bullet point. Notice it'll do it here for part 3, but if I click enter again, nope, not that. There you go. Instead, it's a backspace. Notice it starts creating new trapezoids, and I could type in part 4. There you go, and keep on adding on. If you don't want to use this text pane, you could click on the X, or notice you could toggle it on and off here. In this new tab, SmartArt Design, all the way on the left, text pane. You could turn it off and on again. All right, so that's including text. As for formatting, you'll see here, again, every time we click into our SmartArt graphic, we have our tabs SmartArt Design and Format. If I click outside, those tabs disappear. So just make sure you're selecting the SmartArt graphic. There we go. And notice, more specifically, when you select SmartArt Graphics, so I could click into it. Sometimes it'll show me the display, but you do have to be careful which ones you select. Notice, if I zoom in, right now, what I've selected is just this trapezoid. You'll see that there's a little small highlighting around this trapezoid. If I click here, it selects this trapezoid. If I want to change all of this graphic, you have to go around the border of this graphic itself and click on it. So you'll notice my little cursor, it has that little plus symbol with arrows. That's what you want to see. You'll click, there we go, and you've selected everything, so you could edit all of it. Just make sure you, again, make sure you select what you do want to change. All right, but once you've selected your SmartArt graphic, then you can start changing it, such as the SmartArt Design. You'll see this group called SmartArt Styles. It'll just change how it looks. So if you hover over each one, you'll see the name of the style, and you could also see a preview of how it'll look like. There we go. We have stuff that makes it look bubbly. If you want more options, just click on the Quick Styles drop down. And you'll even see things like this looks very 3D. Let me just do this one here, Intense Effect. There we go. And if you don't like the blue colors, just go over to the SmartArt Styles Change Colors button, click it, and just like with the design colors, you can have different palettes. Some of them can change colors, some of them can be the same color. Maybe I like this colorful one here, kind of like a rainbow. I'll just select it, and it's applied. If there's some other things you want to format, you could go to the Format tab. And there we go. You could change specific, we'll go over this with other graphics, but specific fill colors, that's the color of the shape, or the outline, so how the border is, other effects, and you can even change things about the text itself. Here, it's real quick for the text. If I click in the word Art Styles drop down, and I hover over each one, there you go. You can see the text itself can change. Maybe I like this one. Let me go ahead and select it. And it's applied to the entire graphic. All right. So that's some other formattings you could do. Again, we'll cover something like this in the other graphics. As for sizes of your SmartArt graphic, notice when we select it, we have these little white dots on the corners and edges of the graphic. You could go ahead and hover over each one. You'll notice you get arrows. Your cursor turns into an arrow. And when you click and drag it across the screen, so click, hold, and drag across the screen, it could change the size of your graphic. There we go. If you want specific measurements, you'll go to your Format tab, And all the way on the right, you'll see a size option. Just click on the drop down and you could change the height by editing the measurements in here. So maybe the height should be 3 inches. Again, you could just type in the number, don't need the quotations, hit enter, and it changes the height. And if I want to change the width, go in once more and change the width. Let's say this one we want 5. There we go, and it shortens it for us. Alright, so those are SmartArt Graphics. Again, very nice to show information. Another simple way to show information, not as fancy as SmartArt Graphics, but also good for showing, again, either separation of information or related information, is something called tables. Go to your Insert tab and go to all the way on the left. There is a section, also a section for tables. Click on the drop down. And there are different ways to create tables in your document. One of them is using this grid here. This will indicate how many rows and columns you want your table to be. So you'll see the preview on the screen, and you also see up at the top here that it shows you, hey, you have a 3x3 table. So 3 rows, 3 columns. 2x3 table, 2 columns, 3 rows, and so on. So you could use that, and when you have a table you want, you just click into that square and it'll be provided here. Another way is you go to Insert Table and you type in how many rows and columns you want. So maybe I just want 2 columns, 3 rows. The auto fit means how do you want it to fit the page. So fixed column width will kind of just do its own thing. You could auto fit to the windows, so as big as the document, or to certain contents, which that would actually apply for putting a table in a table. But once you have it set up, click OK. And there we go, and you'll see we have a table in order. And tables are fun to use. You could just type into each of the cells, so that's little boxes. And maybe this one is here. Let's do color. If you want to go to the next cell, you could either click into it, or in this case, I could just tab over, goes to the next cell. And maybe this one is called emotions. You could tab over again and it takes you to the next one below it. You could also use your arrow keys to go, if you have arrow keys on your device, to go up and down. So either use your tab, click into your boxes, or arrow keys. And keep typing. So maybe blue, emotions, sadness. This one, let's do red, emotions, anger. All right. Now this table enough isn't as nice as we would want it. There are specific stylings we could do. For instance, you'll see up here every time we enter a table, so we've clicked into it, you have 2 new tabs up here in the ribbon, Table Design and Table Layout. The Table Design can be your best friend. You'll see there's a group called Table Styles, and if I click on the More option, there's a lot of styles you could choose from. So you'll see that, there we go, there's very colorful ones you could choose from. Let me do this purple one here. Notice when I hover over each one, they have a specific name, and when I select it, it formats the table to something a little more nicer. Something else to keep in mind, notice maybe something like this where the blue and red are prominently displayed, we don't want. In your table design all the way on the left, there's a table style options. The header row is if you have any titles for the headers here. So notice if I deselect it, it shows, there we go, it just kind of goes straight down on the table. But when I select it, the header row is prominently displayed. The first column is the same thing, but if there's any important parts in the first column, if I deselect it, there we go, it gets rid of that. And if I select it again, there we go. Banded rows is if we have a lot of information, it'll alternate the rows between colors, just for us to see clearly how information is displayed. If I turn it off, it's no longer alternating. The same goes for columns. If I select it, it could alternate between columns and how they show. There's a lot more you could do. If you want to shade specific cells, you could choose the shading here. Table layout, if I select it. This could indicate how big do you want certain rows, or if you want to add in new rows and columns. For instance, if we want to add in a new row to this table, in the table layout tab, you'll see there's a group called rows and columns. And if we want to insert a new row, you'll see there's buttons, insert above or insert below. This indicates where you have placed your insertion point. So if I add my insertion point in the row for red, and I click insert below, it'll add a new row below the insertion point. So watch, insertion point here, click insert row below, and the row is added below us. If I do, so same thing, I put my cursor after red. If I do insertion row above, it includes it above me. And then I could keep on typing in information. So this one's green, let's do peace. And this one, let's do purple. And let's do this one confused. All right. So again, how you insert above or below depends on where you have the insertion point. Same goes for columns. In this case with columns, depending on where you have the insertion point, you could include a column to the left of it or the right. So if I include a column insertion point here in the motions column and I do insert column left, it includes it there. All right. If you don't want this column anymore, just put your insertion point inside of any of its cells. So any of the column cells that you want to delete, go to your table layout tab and then go to rows and columns group. There's a button called delete. This will be a drop down. If you select it, there we go. You could go ahead and choose delete columns or delete rows. Delete rows will delete the row you're currently in, which we don't want. In this case, if it's columns, again, search point there, do delete columns, boom, and it deletes it for you. So just make sure you're being careful in the case of deleting rows. Of course, you could select multiple rows by just selecting across cells. So it's kind of like selecting a paragraph, but you've done it across cells. And then you could go to your delete button and then do delete rows. There we go. Just be careful not to delete the entire table unless that's what you're going for. Otherwise, it'll delete everything. All right. So that's a lot of other formatting you could do. The text itself, you could still, here, let me highlight this text. You can still go to your home tab and bold it, italicize, underline, change it to different colors. You could select the entire table and do the paragraph group center alignment to make it, there we go. This one looks a little more nice. All right. So you can still use the home tab to edit the text. Just anything specific to the table will be in your table design or table layout. Okay. Some quick other things we want to do. If this table has its own title. So let me do insert row above. Maybe this row up here is a title. Let's just call this colors and emotions. And let's delete this row down here. So maybe we're not doing it like this. We just want this to be a single title. Usually titles we want centered across the table, but here it's not doing that. To fix it, go ahead and select the rows or columns that you want the text to be centered in. Go to your table layout and there's a group called merge. I'm going to have you click merge cells. And what this does is it'll get your selection of cells and create into one big box. So now you'll see that colors and emotions is centered in the middle of this box. Of course, we do know this is centered because I did the center alignment, but it will do it across this entire expanse. All right. So that's one thing. And of course, another is you could also change the height and width of certain rows and columns with the cell size. Just like how you saw with the SmartArt graphic, you could go and increase the height. You can increase the width. Whoop, actually that's a little too much. Ooh. Undo, there we go. You can increase the height, the width of the entire table, and so on. All right. There's a lot of other things you could do with your tables, especially with the sorting. You'll find it here in the data, but have fun with it. Again, tables not as fancy as SmartArt graphics, but still very simple and neat way to display information. All right, let's do some final fun things for your document. Things like including images. Again, very nice for pamphlets. You're going to go ahead and go to your Insert tab. And in your illustrations group, there's a button called Pictures. Click on the drop down. And if you want to include pictures that you downloaded onto your computer, so in this case for your project, there's going to be a couple of images you are going to download and include in your document. Go and select this device and navigate to those images. So for me, it's in my downloads. Let's say I want to put this for sale image in. Go ahead and select it and click insert. There we go. And the image is included in your document. Now, sometimes including images can be a little tricky. In the terms of placement, how your text interacts with other text has to do with something called wrap text. So the wrap text effect. Notice when you select an image, you get a picture format tab. In your picture format tab, you'll see in your arrange group, there's a wrap text. And if you select it, it shows you how your text can interact with other paragraphs or other graphics. So notice right now the wrap text is in line with text. If I want to move this text around, notice when I hover over it, I get that little plus sign with arrows. I could click and drag it. Oh, kind of hard to do, but click and drag it up here. There we go. And notice it's kind of wonky how it interacts with the text. That's because it put it sit directly with the text here, makes it kind of a part of it. There's other things you could do. So if you go to the wrap text and change it to square, notice it kind of squares out everything, puts itself in a little square in the text, which may not be what you want. Tight kind of does something similar. Through, also similar. Top and bottom means, hey, if I place a text anywhere, text has to be on the top of it or the bottom of it, never in the middle. Go back to my picture format tab. Let me do the wrap text. One of the ones I do recommend, especially if you want to freely move stuff around, is either behind text or in front of text. Typically, I like behind text just in case it actually blocks out parts. But if I do behind text, the image will be placed behind any text. But with this, you could click and move freely around in the page. There we go. So very nice, very simple that you could use. And the in front of text does the same thing, but notice when I put it over the text, it kind of covers it. So not really recommended, but still something you could use. Especially when you have this wrap text in mind, sometimes you could do very specific positioning. For positionings, you could go to your arrange group. There's a button called position. And it'll give you some recommended positions, such as this one puts at the very top corner, but we want to go to our more layout options. And there we go. These are different positionings you could do either horizontally, so horizontally across the page, or vertically, so from the top and bottom. Absolute positioning means that it will do it very specific to the measurements you indicated. So notice I could give the exact size in which I want the picture to start or be at. And this one says absolute position 3 inches to the right of a certain column, or if I click on the drop down, it could be the page itself, so the border. So notice when I click OK, there we go. It puts it right at 3 inches. I know this says 2, but do know that this has a 1-inch margin, 3 inches from the page. I could go back to my positioning. Let's do it to 1 inch. I could just type it in and click OK. There we go. Notice it puts it right at the 1 inch. And you could do the same. So picture format tab, arrange group position, more layout options for up and down how it is. So notice the below, this one does absolute position. Let's do below the page. Let's put it at 5 inches. Click OK. And notice it goes down to 5 inches of the page. All right, let me go ahead and move this to the side. So those are different positionings you could do and wrap text. As for the size, again, you have these little white dots to click and maneuver. Usually when it comes to images, to keep it proportional, I recommend using the edges. So make it smaller and bigger, or again, your picture format tab, you have the size all the way here on the right. With the height, make it bigger, or the width, it will keep it proportional based on those measurements. And there's a lot of other fun things you could do, such as a crop feature if you want to crop the images in the document. And all the way here on the right, you have things like changing the quick edits to the image, such as colors. Notice, let's say if I want something more black and white, I could change saturation, and it changes it for the image. So a lot of different things you could do. Okay, so those are adding images. Again, once more for adding images, it'll be in your Insert tab, Illustrations group, Pictures. You could add in images that you have on this device, or notice any online or stock images you could select. And it acts like a little search. You could type in, maybe we want a plant for this one. There we go, and you could select an image, click Insert, and it's loading it in. Hopefully this one doesn't take a long time. It is taking a long time, so let me go ahead. Nope, never mind. There we go. It includes the image inside of here. And same thing. All the editing you could do, you could apply here. Okay, so that's adding images in. One last thing I want to show is if you don't want specific images, there are small little icons you could choose. So back to your Insert tab. So anywhere on your page, go back to your Insert tab, go to the Illustrations group, and you'll find a section for icons. There we go. Now with icons, these are just a bunch of little, you could think of as like emojis that you could include in your document, but large, and you could edit how it looks. So maybe if I want a check mark, whoop, let me type, there we go, check. Maybe I like this check mark here, a little box, ooh, or this little checklist. I'll just select it and click Insert. There we go. And this also acts very much like an image. So again, sizing applies. You'll notice that the tab is now called Graphics format, but same thing. The positioning also applies to it. The text wrap. Oh, where'd my image go? All right, let me undo that. But the text wrap, same thing applies. Cropping and width and height also in the same sections. The only difference is if we want to change how this icon looks, you'll have to use the graphic styles group. So there's preset styles. If I want to change it to a different color, click on the drop down to find other colors, and we could choose one, like let's say if I want this to be red with a black outline, you could just select it and it changes it accordingly. If I wanted something other than those preset styles, the graphics fill option, it has the little paint bucket, will change the fill of the colors. So maybe if I want this to be like like a light purple, I'll just select the color and notice it changes for the main color of the graphics. Let me select the graphics outline. This is the outline of it. So in this case, you see that along the edges of the purple, it's black. If I want that to be a different color, so let's say let's be a little quirky with orange. You could select it and it changes as well. So that's what you could do with different icons, and there's a lot of other icons you could choose. You could change, there we go, the size. And if you ever see this little twisty, this little backwards arrow around it, you could just click and tilt it around. Very nice. All right. So those are some fun graphics you could include in your document. The very last thing I do want to show is, so graphics, they are fun to include in documents. Very nice to spice up how a document looks. The only problem is usually when, let's say, if you have visually impaired individuals who need to access an online document, usually they have something called a screen reader, which will read the text off of the screen, down to the bullet points, down to headings and styles, which is also a benefit to using styles and such. The problem comes when it goes to graphics. It's hard for a screen reader to read a graphic because it may not necessarily see what's inside of the graphic itself, since it's not text. Of course, there can be the option of it reading the name of the graphic, so the file name that is attributed to it, but sometimes we name our file names very weird and it doesn't explain what's in it. So something we do recommend is something called alt text or alternative text. Any graphics you do include, so more in this case, images, SmartArt Graphics, or icons, we want to apply an alternative text. So every time the screen reader comes across a graphic, it will go ahead and read that alt text. To apply an alt text, you'll go ahead, there's different ways. You could either go to there we go, for each graphic, remember you have a new tab for it. Usually that's in that format tab, the picture format. And you could go to your the accessibility group, and it's called alt text. When you click it, you should get this new pane that pops up on the right. Let me get rid of this by clicking on the X. Another way to do this is select your graphic, right click on it, and you'll see an option called View Alt Text, and it'll bring up the same pane. Okay. Now, in the alt text, anything in this box is what will be read by the screen reader. You could go ahead and type in to this to indicate what the screen reader will read. You can generate alt text, but it is recommended that you do it on your own. So in this case, we could say, well, it already says it here for this graphic. Cool. If you still have your alt text pane open up, you could just click to another graphic. So in this case, let me click this one here for the for sale. There we go. And then I could go into this alt text box and say sign saying sold for sale. There we go. And the same goes for icons. If I click an icon, again, it'll give me something, but we could type into the box. If things like icons aren't important for the document, maybe it's just fun, or as we call it, decorative, you could just click on the little check box for mark as decorative. There we go. And the screen reader will just skip over it. Again, alt text is only good if you want to describe important images or visuals in a document. All right. Alt text also applies to SmartArt Graphics. SmartArt Graphics are kind of hard for screen readers to read, so it is also recommended to use alt text. But remember, be careful what you are choosing, because if you just click into a single shape, like how I select these trapezoids here, just single trapezoids, the alt text will only be applied to those. If you want to apply it to the entire SmartArt graphic to describe what's in there or even to directly translate what text is written in, you have to click along the border of the SmartArt graphic. Once you select it, you can go into the text and then put in parts for a fire drill, stop, drop, and roll. All right. So notice this entire graphic has this alt text. So when the screen reader comes across this, it'll read this part. Do note when I click into a shape, it has no alt text. It will not be, again, this is only for this trapezoid, this shape, not for the entire, when I click on the border, the entire SmartArt graphic. So just make sure you're being careful when you're doing that part of the assignment. I will be looking whether it's the entire graphic or a single shape. I want to see the entire graphic for it. All right. But as fun as it is including text, we do want to make sure that parts of our document are accessible for those who can't access it, for those who can be visually impaired. So just make sure, again, you're taking some care and consideration into your document. Not like how I did here. Notice we have this entire brochure that we could have set up, but I've just gone ahead and added in text, added in graphics at random. You do want to take some special care into how you format everything and the accessibility you provide. All right. That will be it for this demonstration video. Of course, if you do have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.